Hey everyone, this is Mark from Stocks and Cash. It's February 8th, 2018, and I'm here with your market update. I'll go over some positions I'm in and then some potential setups for tomorrow. What a day in the market. Just a devastating meltdown pretty much all day long. You can see this huge black candle, bearish candle, no wick. It was just a massive sell off today. We closed below the low on Tuesday, which was, that Tuesday and Monday were two huge candles. I don't know if this one is exactly the same size, but, quite a bit of sell off. Things are looking pretty ugly. Could we bounce? Yes, we absolutely could, but I would expect some kind of doji, hammer, some other type of indecision type candle before we kind of V bounce and go back higher. But that being said, you know, there's certainly a lot of ability to sell off now. I redrew the fibs here. We bounced up, so that last leg was from here to here, and so just looking at the fibs alone, ignoring these resistance lines that I drew, 251.29 and 241.53. Now this 255 level that I drew, certainly possible. I'm basing off of this candle here, this kind of pivot point, these kind of hammer candles. But truthfully, we didn't really have a reversal or much of a bounce. I mean, it was really pretty steady upwards. It'd be like saying this is a pivot point. It kind of is, but not really. The real pivot point, to me, is here. We kind of came down, came back up a little bit and down again, retested it, and then we were kind of off on our way. So this level is really more of our pivot area. We're through the 100 simple moving average. I know that I don't have the 200 on my chart, but I know that's coming up soon. Or maybe we're past it. I don't really know, but I don't really pay attention to the 200. But this 255 level, I'm thinking 251 might be more realistic. Now I'm not saying we're going to have another huge down bearish candle that's just going to have a meltdown and sell off. But we could gradually come down. That being said, if you look at volatility, volatility is high. Let me look at the real VIX rather than an ETF. The real VIX had quite a bullish candle today. This could be a bear flag. These two bearish candles here, and we've kind of broken out and might continue higher in terms of volatility. MACD is ridiculously strong. I don't even know if you can really. This isn't something that you buy. It's just an indicator. That's why there's ETFs that mirror it. But it's just trying to, I'm just trying to illustrate the point that, volatility is big in the market right now. It's as big as it's been since back in, 825. So as far as I'm concerned, until this volatility starts to cool off, we're in a downturn. So that's kind of my assessment of the S&P 500. I do think we have more downside. Futures right now, I believe, are green, pretty strongly green right now. Maybe that continues into the morning hours. Maybe it reverses. I don't know. But they were red, about 0.3 red. So we've had almost a 1% swing. I don't really know where we're going to go from here. But maybe we come up and test the low of this candle here from Tuesday. Get rejected and then continue our way down. So, or maybe we retest the 100 simple moving average, or maybe we even test this trend line. But my gut tells me that this thing is going to come down. I think we're going to see a wick tomorrow. Maybe some morning strength and then just a smackdown, maybe to 255. Again, I don't think we'll get to 251, but let's take a look at the Qs real quick. Oops. Now we are kind of at a support level here. Let me redraw what our fib levels or targets could be based on this move. So here you go, 150 and 145 essentially. And the 150 kind of, it's a few pennies off, but it kind of lines up with this pivot point here at the 127%, the 160, 1.8. Not really lining up with anything short term. Maybe it's the this kind of resistance here, before we actually kind of, this range before we kind of broke out and went up higher. So, Q's, it is below this trend line. The way I've drawn it, it's below the 100. I do think the 150 level is achievable. That could happen tomorrow. We could open up high, um, get rejected by the low of this large white candle, and then continue on downward. That's kind of the price action I am looking for. Whether we get it or not, I don't know, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, clear bearish downturn. So we'll see what happens. Let's talk about some of my holdings here. So I do have the IWM short. I redrew the fibs to show what some targets are. I mean, clearly this could be a resistance level, the 144, but if we break through, there's not a whole lot holding us up, preventing us from getting to the 139 or the 134. So IWM looking weak. Just a couple puts there. Maybe a scalp if we do open down in the morning. We'll see what happens. Another one is MasterCard. I was kind of high on that one long. It just started selling off, and I just thought it was a potential play to short down to the 55 exponential moving average. So again, redrew my fib, seeing where the potential targets are. If we do get through the 55, maybe the 100 simple moving average, and then down to 144 2 if the market really continues to sell off. But certainly a lot of bearish sentiment in the MACD and the RSI. You see the Stokes are surprisingly turning bullish. I'm not exactly sure why, but that would give me some caution to stay in this trade bearishly for too long, especially if the market decides it wants to rebound. So this could be indicative of a turnaround, potentially, not necessarily, but something to look out for. DE, John Deere, again, this is something I was pretty high on, a few weeks ago, or days ago even, but we broke the 55. We broke this level, the low of this little kind of dip, and then move here. We're below there. If we get through the 100% retracement, we could come down and test the 100 simple moving average and the 145 level. So again, I do think there's some more downside potential on John Deere, but again, you see that the Stokes are kind of turning bullish, but MACD and RSI is strongly bearish. So something I'll just keep an eye on, of course. Cores, Michael Kors, big down, bearish candle today, broke the 55. Kind of settled at this resistance level. This resistance level goes back to, the support level goes back to this large gap here back in 2016, and it acted as resistance back in March of 2017. So, maybe we hold, maybe we don't, but definitely, and this is also a fib target as well. And then certainly target of 57.1 if we come down to the 100 simple moving average. So again, definitely something to look at for cores. And if cores really sells off, there is this gap here, and gaps tend to like to fill. So if the market really sells off over the next week or two, we could easily get down to this 48 level. So keeping an eye on that stock. Let's see, a couple more. MasterCard. Same thing as in DE, essentially it's coming down. I believe it was D. Let me check real quick. No, it wasn't D. There was one that I was looking at that was approaching the 55. But at any rate, MasterCard coming towards the 55 exponential moving average. Oh, you know what? That's why it looks familiar, because I already talked about it. I apologize. Moving on. Let's talk about some potential setups for tomorrow. American Express. closed just below the low of Tuesday's candle. Redrew the fibs from the low of Tuesday to the high back here where we started this move before we kind of bounced. Um, Oversold in RSI. MACD's bearish. Stokes are kind of meandering. But again, if the market continues to sell off, which I think it will ultimately, targets of 85 and 81, 82 range in here. So that's something to look at for tomorrow. If we sell off, in the afternoon like we have been doing these last few days, Capital One Financial is a pretty similar chart. We're below the 100, below the 55, below the low of Tuesday. Redrew the fibs from the low of Tuesday up to the high of that last move. And I see targets of 89 and 84. This one looks ripe for selling off, honestly. Everything is looking bearish. And again, maybe we back test the low of the Tuesday candle. Maybe we back test, the 100 exponential moving average, which is kind of around the same level. But ultimately, I do think we're going to continue on bearishly, unless, again, we put in a doji or some other indication that we've hit a low. But, I have to go with what price action is showing me, and to me, it's bearish. Let's take a look at 3M, another potential short trade. Redrew the fibs here. Pretty self-explanatory. We're below the 55, below the 100 simple moving average. Definitely see an opportunity for it to come down to 216 and 204, given that the market continues to sell off. Not much else to say about that. You want to play it with a 5-minute rule. If we come down, whatever the first 5-minute candle is, if we get a close below the low of that candle, or maybe you want to wait to, if we kind of start up green tomorrow and then we get smacked down, maybe you want to wait until the low of today's candle before you get in to confirm that we are racing down and getting, making new lows. So it just depends on your trading plan and what risk you feel comfortable with. So those are a couple ways you could play, most of these stocks, to be honest. HON, same story as Triple M, 3M rather. You're below the 100, below the 55. Indicators are showing bearish tendencies. 143 and 138 are my targets on this one. Let's see. MetLife. Now this one, broke below this resistance level here. It was pretty strong support at one point, and it just melted right through that resistance level, as you can see here. Didn't really think twice about it. Well below all of our exponential moving averages. Not a whole lot of resistance. I mean, you could argue maybe this is some resistance, maybe this is some resistance, but not as strong as the clear bounce that we had both here back in February and here back in June, July time frame. So I do think the 41.76 and some range between 38.92 and 38.1, if we continue lower. The last one I have for you is Texas Instrument, TXN. Same story. We're below all of these trend lines, or moving averages rather. I didn't redraw the fib because this last leg is still intact in the sense that we haven't breached it yet. We haven't closed below it. So I've left this drawing here. So the first target really would be 94.31. If we get below there, then maybe I draw the fibs in the opposite direction to see how low we could go. But just looking at support and resistance, there's really not any kind of support until $84. So certainly a long way to fall for Texas Instrument if the market sells off. And there's still room to go on RSI. MACD is very bearish, although it's approaching some levels that it hasn't gotten to. It's only been lower than it is now, one other time back here in January of 17. So, that doesn't mean that we can't go lower. It just means historically we haven't, the MACD hasn't gone much lower than it is right now. But, it'd take a lot for it to turn around and cross over bullishly. And given the way the market's behaving, I don't see that as as an option. Just to recap here, again, indication is very bearish. It's possible we could bounce and move right on up. I'm not trying to say that that's not going to happen. All I'm trying to say is that my perspective is that we're still bearish, and until we get confirmation otherwise, that's the short-term trend that I need to consider. While I'm thinking of it, let's take a quick look at Tesla. They had earnings today. Big down day. I think 305, 306 area is still realistic as a target. Given the earnings miss, I assume it was an earnings miss, or maybe just a combination of the bad market and maybe not excellent results. But this trend line, the short-term trend line that I drew that was intact, was breached. We're well below the exponential moving averages and the simple moving average, so I do think there's opportunity for Tesla to sell off at least to the 306 level. Perhaps it bounces here. If it breaks through, that's another story, and we'll have to reevaluate. That's all I have for tonight. Hope to hear from you if you have any questions or comments. Otherwise, have a great night and good luck trading tomorrow.